I woke up to a frantic neighbor calling at dawn. My 84-year-old grandmother was shivering on my porch with garbage bags. My parents had dumped her like trash to steal her home for my brother, but they forgot I held the power of attorney. This is where the story truly begins, and you won't want to miss what happens next. Make sure you're subscribed to see it through to the end. We're always curious. Where in the world are you all watching from today? Let us know in the comments. I was already awake when the phone rang, though my body felt like it was made of lead. I had just finished a grueling stretch of 3 double shifts at the rehabilitation center, my muscles aching in that deep, thrumming way that makes sleep almost impossible. I was sitting on the edge of my bed, staring at the gray light filtering through the blinds, trying to summon the energy to walk to the kitchen for a glass of water. My head was pounding, a tension headache that had started at the base of my skull 2 days ago and refused to leave. When my phone buzzed on the nightstand, the screen lighting up the gloom, I flinched. The clock read 5:32 a.m. No one calls at 5:32 a.m. unless someone is dead or dying. I grabbed the phone, my heart instantly hammering against my ribs, expecting the hospital calling me back in or worse. The caller ID didn't say Mom or Dad. It said Mrs. Gable. Mrs. Gable was my next-door neighbor, a sweet, elderly woman who usually only texted me pictures of her prize-winning hydrangeas or to let me know if a package had been left in the rain. "Hello," my voice rasped, thick with exhaustion. "Elizabeth, oh, thank God you answered." Mrs. Gable's voice was high, pitched with a panic I had never heard from her before. "Honey, you need to come to your front door, right now." "What? Why? Is your husband okay?" I was already standing, the adrenaline flushing the fatigue out of my system. "It's not me, honey. I think it's your grandmother. I was letting the dog out, and I saw a car speed off, and oh, just come outside, Elizabeth, please." I didn't even put on shoes. I ran down the stairs, nearly tripping over my own feet, and tore open the front door. The morning air was biting, a damp, cold mist clinging to everything. And there she was, sitting on the wicker love seat on my porch, huddled inside a thin, knitted cardigan that offered absolutely no protection against the 50-degree chill, was Nana Rose. She looked tiny. That was the first thing that hit me, how small she looked against the cushions. Next to her were 3 black heavy-duty trash bags, cinched tight with yellow ties. She was staring out at the driveway, her silver hair uncombed and matted on one side as if she had been pulled directly from bed. Her hands, spotted with age and trembling violently, were clutching her purse so tight her knuckles were white. "Nana," I breathed out, the word freezing in the air. She turned her head slowly. Her eyes were glassy, filled with a confusion that terrified me. For a second, she looked at me like I was a stranger. Then, recognition flickered, and her face crumpled. "Lizzie," she whispered, her voice cracking. They said you were expecting me. They said I live here now." I rushed to her, falling to my knees on the cold concrete porch, wrapping my arms around her freezing frame. She felt like ice. She wasn't just cold, she was hypothermic. "Who, Nana? Who said that?" I rubbed her arms frantically, trying to generate friction, trying to transfer my own body heat into her. "Who dropped you off?" She looked over my shoulder, back toward the street where the taillights would have long since faded. A single tear tracked through the wrinkles on her cheek. "Maria and Joshua," she said, naming my parents. "And Jaxon. They said the house is for Jaxon now. They said I'm too much trouble, Lizzie. They said it was your turn." I looked at the trash bags, her life reduced to garbage bags, and then back at her devastatingly humiliated expression. My parents, her own daughter and son-in-law, hadn't just moved her out. They had dumped her on my doorstep before the sun came up like an unwanted animal, so they could steal her home for my golden child brother. The rage that surged through me wasn't hot, it was cold. It was absolute zero. It clarified everything. I looked at my grandmother, shivering and discarded, and I realized my parents hadn't just made a mistake. They had declared war. Getting Nana Rose inside was an ordeal that broke my heart in slow motion. Her legs were stiff from the cold and the car ride, and every movement seemed to cause her pain. I practically carried her into the living room, her weight negligible against my shoulder. I settled her onto the sofa and immediately went into professional mode, my training as a physical therapist taking over where my emotions couldn't handle the load. I cranked the thermostat up to 75. I ran to the linen closet and pulled out the heated throw blanket and the thick down comforter. I wrapped her like a cocoon, tucking the edges in around her shaking shoulders. "I'll make tea," I said, my voice sounding strangely steady to my own ears. "Earl Grey, plenty of sugar, just how you like it." She nodded, staring blankly at the fireplace. "They changed the locks, Lizzie," she murmured, almost to herself. "I tried to use my key to get back in to get my photo album, the one with your grandfather, but the key wouldn't turn." Jaxon was laughing inside. I stopped in the hallway, my hands balled into fists so tight my fingernails cut into my palms. Jaxon, my 28-year-old brother, who had never held a job for longer than 6 months, was laughing while our 84-year-old grandmother was locked out of her own home. I went to the kitchen, put the kettle on, and pulled out my phone. My hands were shaking now, not from cold, but from a fury so intense it made my vision blur. I dialed my mother, Maria. It went to voicemail. I dialed my father, Joshua. Voicemail. I dialed Jaxon. It rang 4 times, and then a groggy voice answered. "What? Liz, it's not even 6 a.m. Why are you calling?" "Put Mom on the phone," I said. My voice was low, dangerous. "She's busy, we're moving boxes. It's a big day," Jaxon muttered, sounding annoyed. "Look, did Nana get there? We dropped her off like 20 minutes ago. Mom said you'd be up." "You dropped her on the porch, Jaxon, in the cold, with trash bags." "Yeah, well, we rang the bell," he lied. I knew he was lying. My dog would have barked. "She's your problem now, Liz. Mom and Dad said you have the space, and since you're single and all, you have the time. Julia and I need the house. We're pregnant again, and the apartment is too small." "You need the house?" I repeated, gripping the phone so hard the case creaked. "It's Nana's house, Jaxon. She has lived there for 40 years. "Not anymore," Jaxon scoffed. "Mom and Dad said she's incompetent. They're handling her affairs now. And they decided the house is better suited for a growing family than, a vegetable." "She is not a vegetable, you moron. She's lucid. She's scared." "Whatever. Look, don't call here causing drama. Mom said if you make a fuss, they'll cut you off from the family entirely. Just do your job, Liz. Take care of old people. It's what you do, right?" He hung up. The silence in the kitchen was deafening. The kettle started to whistle, a high, shrieking sound that matched the screaming in my head. I made the tea. I forced myself to breathe. In through the nose, out through the mouth. I couldn't lose it, not yet. Nana needed me. I walked back into the living room. Nana had stopped shivering, but she looked small and defeated. "They took it all, didn't they?" she asked softly. I set the tea down and sat beside her, taking her hand. "They think they did, Nana. They think they've won." She looked at me, eyes filled with tears. "I don't want to be a burden, Elizabeth. I can go to a home. I have some savings." "You are staying right here," I said firmly. "And you are not going to a home. That house is yours. They can't just take it." "Your father said they have power of attorney," she whispered, looking down at her lap. "He said he signed the papers last week while I was napping." I froze. A dark, twisted smile touched my lips. It was the smile of a hunter who realizes the prey has just stepped directly into the snare. "He said he signed them last week," I asked, clarifying. "Yes," he waved a paper at me. I squeezed her hand, a surge of vindictive triumph rushing through my veins. My parents, in their arrogance and greed, had made a fatal calculation error. They assumed Nana was just a senile old woman who didn't remember what she had done 3 years ago, right after Granddad died. They thought they had the power, but they had forgotten one crucial thing. To understand why this betrayal cut so deep, you have to understand the dynamic of my family. I have always been the reliable one, the invisible one. When I was in college, I worked 2 jobs to pay my tuition so my parents wouldn't have to contribute a dime. When I graduated and became a physical therapist, I was the one who came over to mow their lawn, the one who drove them to the airport, the one who managed their appointments. Jaxon was the golden boy, the sun around which Maria and Joshua orbited. He was 28, but in their eyes, he was a prodigy who just hadn't found his footing yet. He had started 5 different businesses, all funded by my parents, and all of them had failed spectacularly. Yet, every time he crashed, Maria and Joshua were there with a soft landing and a checkbook. Then came Julia. My sister-in-law was a piece of work. She was 26, an influencer with 2,000 followers who believed she was destined for a mansion and a luxury lifestyle. She looked at people like me. People who worked set hours and wore scrubs with veiled contempt. To Julia, appearances were everything. Nana Rose had always been the buffer. She was the only one who saw me. When I was 10 and my parents forgot my birthday because Jaxon had a soccer game, Nana Rose showed up with a homemade cake and a locket. She paid for my books in grad school. She was my rock. And for the last year, my parents had been circling her like vultures. I sat there in the living room, watching Nana sip her tea, and the pieces started to click together. I remembered the dinner 2 months ago. We were all at my parents' house. Julia had been complaining loudly about their apartment. "It's just so cramping for my creativity," Julia had whined, swirling her wine. "And with the baby coming, we need space. We need a yard." My mother, Maria, had looked at her with adoring eyes. "Oh, we know, honey. Joshua and I are working on a solution. We want Jaxon to have the best start." Then my father, Joshua, had turned his gaze to Nana Rose, who was eating quietly at the end of the table. "Mom," Joshua had said, his voice slick and oily, "you know, that big house is a lot for you to manage alone. The stairs, the maintenance, it's dangerous." "I'm fine, Joshua," Nana had replied sharply. "I have a gardener, I sleep on the first floor, I'm not invalid." Joshua had exchanged a look with Maria, a look I now recognized as pure malice. "We're just thinking of your safety, Mom, and thinking of the family legacy. Jaxon needs a start." I had intervened then. "Nana is fine. If she needs help, I'm there 3 times a week." They had ignored me. They always ignored me. But I hadn't realized they were plotting a coup. The antagonist here wasn't just Jaxon and his entitlement. It was my parents, Maria and Joshua. They were the architects. Joshua, a mid-level manager who spent money he didn't have to look rich, and Maria, a social climber who desperately wanted to brag about her son's estate. They viewed Nana's house, a beautiful, paid-off Victorian in the historic district, not as her home, but as an asset wasting away on an old woman. They felt entitled to it. And now they had made their move. They had physically removed her, changed the locks, and installed the golden child. I looked at Nana, who had fallen asleep sitting up, exhausted by the trauma of the morning. "They think you're weak, Nana," I whispered to the sleeping woman. "They think I'm passive." My phone pinged. It was a text from Julia. "Hey Liz, so exciting about the move. Jaxon said you have Nana. Thanks so much for taking her, it's a huge relief for us. We're going to do a massive reno on the house, gutting that dusty old kitchen first. Total farmhouse vibes. We're having a housewarming next Saturday. You should come, but leave Nana, she might be confused." Gutting the kitchen. Nana's kitchen. The kitchen where she taught me to bake, where we had our secrets. I stared at the text. The audacity was breathtaking. They truly believed they had won. They believed that because they were the parents and the brother, I would just roll over and accept the new reality to keep the peace. I stood up and walked to my home office. I unlocked the fireproof safe in the closet. My hands weren't shaking anymore. I pulled out a thick blue folder. I opened it and scanned the document inside, checking the dates, checking the signatures, checking the notarized stamp. 3 years ago, when Nana had a minor scare, she had come to me. Not her son, me. "I don't trust Joshua," she had said. "He looks at my checkbook too often." We had gone to a lawyer, a very expensive, very thorough lawyer. I looked at the document in my hand, irrevocable trust. And the second document, durable power of attorney, granting Elizabeth Ann Miller sole decision-making power over all assets, explicitly revoking any prior or future claims by Joshua Miller. My father had signed papers with Nana last week. Whatever he had her sign was void. It was toilet paper. The house wasn't in Nana's name anymore. It was in the trust. And I was the trustee. Julia wants farmhouse vibes, I said to the empty room, closing the folder with a snap. Let's see how she likes the vibe of an eviction notice. I didn't go to work that day. I called the clinic and told them I had a family emergency, which was technically the truth, though the emergency was that my family had mutated into monsters. After I settled, Nana rose into the guest room, which I had set up with her favorite quilt and a stack of her gardening magazines. I went straight to the kitchen table and opened my laptop. The rage was still there, sitting heavy in my gut like a stone, but it had calcified into something cold and hard. I wasn't just angry anymore, I was methodical. I needed to know exactly how deep the rot went before I started cutting. My first call wasn't to my parents, it was to Mr. Henderson. Mr. Henderson was the estate attorney Nana N.D. I had seen 3 years ago. He was a man who wore bow ties and spoke in paragraphs, and he terrified people like my father because he exuded the kind of quiet, expensive competence that frauds shrink away from. Elizabeth, his voice rumbled over the speakerphone. To what do I owe the pleasure? How is Rose? She's currently sleeping in my guest room because my parents dumped her on my porch at 5 in the morning and changed the locks on her house, I said, my voice flat. There was a long, heavy silence on the line. Then, the rustle of papers. I see, and I assume they are claiming some sort of authority to do so. My brother says Dad has power of attorney. He says he signed papers with Nana last week. Impossible, Mr. Henderson said, the words snapping like a whip. We established the irrevocable trust 3 years ago. Rose's capacity was fully vetted then. She resigned her rights to the property into the trust, of which you are the trustee. She literally cannot give the house away, even if she wanted to, without your signature. And any power of attorney document signed now would be immediately contested given the diagnosis of mild cognitive impairment we have on file. Not to mention, it wouldn't override your position as trustee regarding the assets. They don't know about the trust, I reminded him. We never told them. Nana was afraid Joshua would yell at her. Well, Mr. Henderson said, his voice dropping to a low, dangerous growl. It appears the time for secrets is over. Elizabeth, if they have removed her from the home, that is an illegal eviction. If they are accessing her accounts, that is theft and elder abuse. Do I have your permission to draft a cease and desist and to prepare an emergency motion for a protective order? Not yet, I said, staring at the wall where a picture of me and Nana hung. I want to see what they've done first. I need to know how much they've stolen. I spent the next 3 hours becoming an investigator. Because I had the real power of attorney, I had online access to every single one of Nana's accounts. I logged into her primary checking account. My breath hitched. The balance, which usually hovered around $15,000, her rainy day fund, was $42. I clicked on the transaction history. Transfer to J. Miller, $5,000 pending. Transfer to J. Miller, $5,000 cleared yesterday. Best Buy, $2,400 cleared yesterday. Rooms to go, $3,100 cleared yesterday. They weren't just moving into the house, they were looting her life to furnish it. I checked her savings, drained. I checked her pension deposit, redirected. My father, Joshua, had likely bullied a confused bank teller with a fraudulent or recently coerced power of attorney document to get access. He had cleaned her out in less than 48 hours. I felt sick, physically sick. I looked at the rooms to go charge. My brother Jaxon and his wife Julia were buying new furniture for their new house using the money Nana had saved from 50 years of working as a librarian. I stood up, the chair screeching against the floor. I grabbed my car keys. I didn't care that I was wearing sweatpants and a hoodie. I didn't care that I looked like a wreck. I had the leverage. I had the trust documents in my bag. I had the bank statements on my phone. It was time to pay a visit to the happy couple. I drove to Nana's house, my house, legally speaking, with a singular focus. The neighborhood was quiet, lined with oak trees and historic homes, the kind of place where people wave to each other. But as I pulled into the driveway, the peace was shattered. A massive dumpster was sitting in the middle of the driveway. It was already half full. I parked my car behind Jaxon's leased BMW, blocking him in, and got out. The front door was wide open. Blasting from inside was some atrocious pop music. I walked up the steps, the same steps Nana had swept every morning for 40 years, and stepped inside. The scene was a desecration. Julia was standing in the middle of the living room, pointing at the wall. "No, Jaxon, I said the shiplap needs to go horizontal, not vertical, and we need to rip out this carpet today. It smells like old people." Jaxon was by the fireplace, holding a crowbar. He was prying the mantel, the hand-carved mahogany mantel my grandfather had installed, off the wall. "Hey," I screamed. The sound tore out of my throat, raw and primal. The music stopped. Jaxon dropped the crowbar. Julia spun around, her face twisting into a sneer when she saw me. "Jesus, Liz," Jaxon said, wiping sweat from his forehead. "You can't just walk in here. We're busy. Did you take the old lady?" "Her name is Nana," I said, walking further into the room. My eyes scanned the space. Nana's collection of porcelain birds was gone, the shelves were empty. And yes, she's safe, unlike this house. "We're updating," Julia said, crossing her arms over her chest. She was wearing a pristine white traw. CK suit that probably cost more than Nana's monthly medication. "It's too dark in here. We need to brighten it up. Modernize. You wouldn't understand. You don't have an eye for design." "You need to stop," I said, my voice shaking with suppressed rage. "Put the crowbar down, Jaxon. Get out." Jaxon laughed. It was a cruel, barking sound. "Get out? Liz, this is my house. Mom and Dad gave it to me. We have the keys. We're doing Nana a favor, taking this burden off her hands. She doesn't need a 4-bedroom house." "It's not Mom and Dad's to give," I said, stepping closer. "And it's certainly not yours." "Dad has power of attorney," Jaxon yelled, puffing his chest out, trying to intimidate me. "He signed the deed over to me yesterday. It's done. The papers are filed." "Show me," I challenged. "Show me the papers." "I don't have to show you anything," Jaxon spat. "You're just jealous because you're 32, single, and living in a townhouse while I'm raising the family legacy. You've always been jealous of me, Liz. That's why you're trying to ruin this." "I'm not trying to ruin anything," I said, reaching into my bag. "I'm trying to save you from a felony." I pulled out the photocopy of the trust deed. I slammed it onto the coffee table, the only piece of Nana's furniture they hadn't thrown out yet. "Read it," I commanded. Julia picked it up, her manicured nails tapping on the paper. She squinted at the legalese. "What is this? The Rose Miller Irrevocable Trust? What does that mean?" "It means," I said, locking eyes with Jaxon, "that Nana doesn't own this house. The trust owns this house. And do you know who the trustee is? Do you know who the only person on this planet is who can authorize a transfer of deed or a renovation?" I pointed a finger at my own chest. "Me." Jaxon stared at the paper, then at me. His face went red. "That's fake. Dad said he handled it. He said he got her to sign the quitclaim." "Whatever she signed last week is worthless," I said, my voice dropping to a terrifying calm. "Because she didn't have the title. You can't give away what you don't own, Jaxon, and you are currently destroying property that belongs to a trust. That's criminal damage to property." "You're lying," Julia shrieked, throwing the paper back at me. "Joshua promised us. We already sold our lease. We have nowhere else to go." "Not my problem," I said. "You have 1 hour to pack your tools and get out. If you are still here at noon, I'm calling the police and reporting a break-in." Jaxon grabbed the crowbar again, stepping toward me. I'm not leaving. Dad said this is mine. He said you'd try to pull something like this. He said you're manipulative. Call him, I said, not flinching. Call Dad, tell him about the trust, see what he says. Jaxon pulled out his phone, his hands shaking with rage. He dialed, put it on speaker. Dad, Liz is here, she's showing us some paper, some trust thing. She says she owns the house. My father's voice crackled through the speaker, dripping with arrogance. Don't listen to her, son. She's bluffing. She's always been dramatic. I have the power of attorney. I am the patriarch of this family, and I decide who lives where. Throw her out. He says throw you out, Jaxon smirked, ending the call. So get out before I make you. I looked at my brother. I looked at the hole he had gouged in the wall. I looked at the smug satisfaction on Julia's face. They really thought that because Dad said so, the law didn't apply to them. They were operating on the logic of a dysfunctional family dynamic, not the logic of the real world. Okay, I said, picking up the document. I'm leaving, but Jaxon, when the police come, don't say I didn't warn you. I walked out. I didn't go to the police station. Not yet. I had one more stop to make. I needed to seal the tomb they had just dug for themselves. I sat in my car around the corner, watching the house. I saw Jaxon come out and throw another armful of Nana's books into the dumpster. They weren't stopping. My father's reassurance had emboldened them. They were doubling down. My phone rang. It was Maria, my mother. I stared at the screen for a long moment before answering. I needed to hear it. I needed to hear her defend this. Elizabeth Ann Miller, she hissed the moment I picked up. How dare you go over there and upset your brother? Julia is pregnant. You are causing her stress. You threw Nana out like garbage, Mom, I said. You dumped your own mother on a porch in the cold. We did what was necessary, she snapped. She's gone, Elizabeth. Her mind is gone. She doesn't need that space. Jaxon is the future of this family. We made an executive decision. You should be thanking us for handling the logistics. Handling the logistics? You stole her money. I saw the transfers, Mom. $10,000 to Jaxon, furniture stores. That is none of your business, she shrieked. We are her guardians, Decide how her money is spent. And spending it on housing for her great-grandchild is what she would have wanted if she were lucid. She is lucid, I yelled back, losing my cool for the first time. She's crying in my guest room asking why you hate her. Oh, stop being so dramatic. You always play the victim. Look, if you don't give Jaxon the keys to the garage and stop this trust nonsense, we are going to sue you for kidnapping. We have the POA. We have the rights. You have nothing. You're going to sue me? I asked, a dark laugh bubbling up. Yes, we've already called our lawyer. He says since we have the recent POA, yours is outdated. So bring her back or bring her to the facility we picked out and stay out of Jaxon's way. He's hosting a housewarming party on Saturday for the whole family and the church group. Don't ruin it for him. A housewarming party, I repeated, on Saturday. Yes, and you are not invited unless you apologize. She hung up. I sat there, the phone warm in my hand. They were having a party. They were inviting the extended family, aunts, uncles, cousins, and the church group. They were going to parade their theft in front of everyone, disguised as a blessing. They were going to publicize their crime. I started the car. I drove straight to the bank. I sat down with the branch manager, a woman I had known for years. I placed the trust documents and my ID on the desk. I need to report fraudulent activity, I said, and I need to freeze these accounts immediately. My parents are using a voided POA to drain the trust's funds. The manager looked at the documents, then at the recent transfers. Her face went pale. Elizabeth, these transfers were authorized by Joshua Miller yesterday morning. He claimed it was for medical equipment. It was for a leather sectional from Rooms to Go, I said, sliding the printed transaction list across the desk. And unless you want the bank to be liable for aiding in elder abuse, we need to reverse these. She typed furiously. I'm freezing everything. I'm flagging the POA as contested. But the money? The wire to Jaxon has already cleared. We can try to claw it back, but it might take days. That's fine, I said. Just make sure my father's card is declined the next time he tries to buy lunch. Next, I went to the courthouse. I filed the emergency injunction Mr. Henderson had prepared. I filed the police report for the theft of funds. But I didn't serve the eviction notice. Not yet. I drove home. Nana was sitting at the kitchen table, staring at a picture of her and Granddad. Her eyes were red. They threw out his chair, she whispered. I asked Jaxon. I called him. And he said it was ugly and smelled like smoke. He threw your grandfather's reading chair in the dumpster. My heart broke. I knelt beside her. I know, Nana, I know. Why are they doing this, Lizzie? I gave them everything. I paid for Jaxon's college. I paid for Joshua's car. Because they are greedy, Nana, and because they think we won't fight back. I don't want to fight, she sobbed. I just want to go home. You will, I promised. Saturday, we're going to get you home on Saturday. I spent the next 2 days preparing. I didn't call them. I ignored their texts. I let them think I was cowed. I let them think I was afraid of their threat to sue. I received a text from my cousin Sarah on Friday. Hey Liz, are you coming to Jaxon's housewarming tomorrow? It's kind of weird that they moved in so fast. Is Nana okay? Aunt Maria says Nana is in a facility now. I replied, Nana is fine. And yes, we will be there. We wouldn't miss it. I looked at the pile of evidence on my desk. The bank statements showing the theft. The trust deed proving ownership. The photos I had taken of the dumpster filled with Nana's memories. They wanted a housewarming party. They wanted to show off their new kingdom to the church and the family. Fine, I would bring the housewarming gift. I picked up the phone and called Mr. Henderson. Is the paperwork ready? I asked. It is, he replied. Sheriff's deputies are booked for a civil standby at 2:00 p.m. Saturday. Perfect, I said. The party starts at 1:00. Elizabeth, Mr. Henderson warned, this will be ugly. They put an 84-year-old woman on a porch in freezing weather, I said. I don't want it to be pretty. I want it to be final. Saturday afternoon was bright and sunny, the kind of deceptively cheerful weather that makes disasters feel surreal. I pulled my car up to the curb 3 houses down from Nana's place. In the passenger seat, Nana Rose was dressed in her Sunday best, a navy blue dress she had insisted on wearing despite her trembling hands. She had applied her lipstick perfectly. She looked like a queen preparing to address a rebellion. Are you ready? I asked, putting the car in park. She took a deep breath, clutching her purse. I'm terrified, Lizzie, but I want my house back. You're going. To get it, I promised. We walked down the sidewalk. The driveway was packed with cars. Balloons, blue and white, Jaxon's favorite colors, were tied to the mailbox. I could hear laughter and the clinking of glasses coming from the backyard. The front door was wide open, welcoming the guests into the stolen kingdom. We walked right in. The living room was crowded. I saw my Aunt Sarah, my Uncle Mike, several of my cousins, and a large contingent from Nana's church, including Pastor Miller, no relation. They were admiring the renovations, the gaping hole where the mantel used to be, the missing bookshelves. Oh, it's so open, one of the church ladies chirped. So modern. Then someone spotted us. The chatter died down instantly. A ripple of silence spread through the room like a cold front. Jaxon was standing near the kitchen island, holding a glass of champagne, looking every inch the lord of the manor. Julia was beside him, hand on her stomach, beaming. My parents, Joshua and Maria, were holding court near the window. When they saw Nana, their faces went slack. Mom, Joshua stammered. He looked at me, his eyes narrowing into slits. Elizabeth, what are you doing here? We told you. We're here for the housewarming, I said, my voice projecting clearly across the silent room. I helped Nana into the only chair left, a folding chair someone had brought. Maria rushed forward, her face flushed red. She lowered her voice to a hiss. Get her out of here, right now. You are embarrassing us in front of the pastor. We told everyone she was in a facility because she was unwell. "I'm not unwell, Maria," Nana said. Her voice was thin, but it cut through the room like a razor. "I'm just homeless because you threw me out." A collective gasp went through the room. Aunt Sarah dropped her plastic cup of wine. "She's confused," Jaxon shouted, stepping forward, trying to regain control of the narrative. He laughed nervously, looking around at the guests. "Grandma's mind is, slipping. She forgets we made this arrangement for her own safety. We're taking care of everything." "Is that what you call it?" I asked, stepping into the center of the room. I opened my bag. "Taking care of things? Is that why you emptied her savings account 2 days ago?" "Shut up, Elizabeth," Joshua roared, stepping between me and the guests. "Don't you dare air dirty laundry here. This is a celebration." "It's a crime scene," I said calmly. I pulled out the stack of papers. I didn't hand them to my father. I handed them to Uncle Mike, who was a retired forensic accountant. "Uncle Mike, could you look at this?" I asked. "Tell me what the Rose Miller Irrevocable Trust says about the ownership of this property." Mike put on his glasses. The room was deathly silent. My father made a move to grab the papers, but Mike turned his back, shielding them. "It says," Mike read slowly, his voice booming, "that the property is held in trust. The sole trustee is Elizabeth Miller. The beneficiary is Rose Miller." He looked up, his face darkening. "Joshua, this is dated 3 years ago. This predates any power of attorney you claim to have." "It's a forgery," Maria shrieked. "She forged it." "And this," I pulled out the bank printouts. "Is this a forgery, Jaxon? A $5,000 wire transfer from Nana's account to yours, labeled gift. Did she give you that gift while she was shivering on my porch at 5 a.m.? Jaxon turned pale. She owed me that, for helping her move." "You didn't help her move," I said, turning to the crowd. "You dumped her. You put an 84-year-old woman outside in the cold with trash bags so you could play house." I turned to the pastor. "Pastor, my parents told you she was in a facility, didn't they? Did they mention that the facility was my front porch before sunrise?" The pastor looked at my parents, his expression shifting from confusion to righteous judgment. "Joshua, is this true?" "It's a misunderstanding." Joshua was sweating now, backing up against the wall. "We were going to find her a place. We just needed the house immediately because she's delicate." "The house isn't yours," I yelled, finally letting the anger loose. "It never was. You have been renovating a house you do not own with money you stole." "Get out," Jaxon screamed, throwing his glass on the floor. It shattered, sending champagne and glass everywhere. "This is MY house. I have the keys. I have the baby coming. You're just a jealous, bitter spinster trying to ruin my life." "Actually," a deep voice came from the doorway. Everyone turned. 2 uniformed sheriff's deputies were standing in the entryway, flanked by Mr. Henderson. "No one owns this house but the trust," the first deputy said, stepping over the broken glass. "And we have a report of trespassing, elder abuse, and grand larceny." Jaxon froze. He looked at the deputies, then at his wife, then at his parents. The bravado evaporated in Stanley, leaving behind a terrified child. "Dad," Jaxon whimpered, "you said you fixed it. You said the lawyer said it was okay." Joshua was staring at the floor, unable to meet his son's eyes. I thought. "Mr. Joshua Miller?" the deputy asked. "We need to ask you some questions about a series of unauthorized transfers from the accounts of Rose Miller. And Mr. Jaxon Miller, we need to speak to you about the destruction of property inside a residence you do not have a lease for." Julia burst into tears. "But we bought furniture, we sold our apartment, we have nowhere to go." I walked over to Nana. She was sitting straight, watching the people who had tormented her crumble. She looked at Jaxon, who was now crying as the deputy asked for his ID. "Nana," Jaxon pleaded, seeing the handcuffs come out. Tell them you said we could live here. Please, I can't go to jail, I have a baby." Nana Rose looked at him. She didn't look angry anymore. She just looked incredibly tired. "I never said you could have my house, Jaxon," she said softly. "And I certainly never said you could throw away your grandfather's chair." "Ma'am," the deputy said to me, "do you want them removed from the premises?" I looked at Jaxon, sobbing. I looked at my parents, cowering under the glare of the entire church congregation. "Yes," I said, "I want them all out now." The exodus was humiliating and absolute. Under the watchful eyes of the deputies, Jaxon and Julia had to pack their personal bags, mostly just the clothes they had brought for the weekend, and leave. They weren't allowed to take the new furniture they had bought with stolen money. The deputies said it was now evidence in a theft investigation. My parents tried to leave with dignity, but it's hard to be dignified when your own brother, Uncle Mike, is shouting at you about being a disgrace to the family name. The pastor followed them to their car, presumably to have a very long conversation about their souls, though I suspected their reputation in the community was damaged beyond repair. By 4:00 p.m., the house was quiet. The guests had left, murmuring apologies to Nana, hugging her, promising to bring casseroles. They were shocked, yes, but mostly they were relieved that someone had finally stood up to Joshua and Maria's bullying. I stood in the living room with Nana. It was a mess. The walls were damaged, the carpet was torn up in the corner, and the smell of cheap champagne hung in the air. "It's going to take some work to fix this," I said, looking at the empty spot where the mantel used to be. Nana smiled. It was the first genuine smile I had seen in days. "We have time, Lizzie. We have plenty of time." The fallout over the next few weeks was catastrophic for them, and peaceful for us. Jaxon and Julia had to move into my parents' basement, a poetic justice that I savored. Without the free house and the stolen funds, the tension in their marriage exploded. I heard through the grapevine that Julia was already staying with her own mother more often than not. My parents faced serious charges. Because Mr. Henderson was ruthless, they were hit with fraud and elder abuse charges. To avoid prison, they accepted a plea deal: full restitution of every cent stolen, a permanent restraining order keeping them away from Nana and the property, and probation. They had to take a second mortgage on their own house to pay Nana back. They were financially crippled and socially ostracized. As for me, I moved in with Nana, not as a caretaker, but as a roommate. We used the restitution money to fix the house, putting it back the way she wanted it. We found a carpenter who recreated the mahogany mantel from old photos. One evening, a month later, we were sitting on the porch, the same porch where they had dumped her. We were drinking tea, wrapped in blankets, watching the sunset. "You saved my life, Elizabeth," Nana said suddenly, breaking the silence. "You saved mine, Nana," I replied, squeezing her hand. "You were the only one who ever saw me." "I see you now," she said firmly, "and I see that you're the strongest one of us all." I looked out at the street. I thought about Jaxon in the basement. I thought about my parents, drowning in debt and shame. And I thought about us, sitting here in our paid-off house, safe and sound. They had tried to throw us away. They had tried to erase us. But in the end, they had only succeeded in reminding us exactly who held the power. I took a sip of tea. It tasted like victory,